Hello, everyone, and welcome to the launch of our Theme Accelerator program. My name is Liam Griffin, and I'm a theme developer evangelist at Shopify. We are super excited to be joining you this morning or this afternoon, wherever you might be. It's great to see that there's already people tuning in from London, Bali, Vancouver, and great to see some familiar faces Charlene, Sasha, Margaret, Kirsten joining us from all over the world. So that's really good to have you here. Just a reminder that this webinar is being recorded and it will be shared via email with all registrants in the coming days. So if you want to re-watch anything from today's webinar, you'll be able to do so. We'll email you out that link in the coming days. Also, thanks to everyone who submitted a question via our Slido form. There will be an AMA session in the second half of this webinar where we'll be going through as many questions as we can. And you can still submit questions via the form, which we will drop into the chat. So feel free to ask questions through Slido during the webinar and upvote the questions that you feel are important. So just before we get started, I'd like to allow all the team members here to introduce themselves and give a brief overview of what they do within Shopify. I can go first. As I mentioned, my name is Liam. I'm a theme developer evangelist, and over the past few years, I've created a lot of technical content to help theme developers build and customize themes. And I work very closely with the theme developer community to upskill and to grow their businesses. And during this Theme Accelerator program, I'll be available to guide and assist you with your theme builds. So I'll throw it over to Michael now to introduce himself, and we'll go around the room.
Thanks, Liam. Hey, everybody. Good to see everyone out there. This is my second webinar. Very exciting. I'm Mike. I lead the theme partnerships team, and I will pass the mic to Marcus.
Hi, everyone. Great to see you again. Marcus here, all the way from Ireland. And yes, I'm also on the Theme Partnerships team. I'm delighted to be here and looking forward to some exciting questions today. And I'll pass it over to my other teammate, Vince, as well.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Marcus. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Vince Dobson, also on the Theme Partnership team, working with Mike and Marcus. We're happy to have you here today and looking forward to your questions.
Who's next?
I'll take it from there. Hey, everyone. My name's Thomas. I'm a developer advocate for Online Store. I have been working on themes for a while now, everything from building themes to theme developer tooling and performance. Happy to be here. Looking forward to your questions. Really interested on the theme business building side of things right now. And I will pass it off last but not least, Mr. Ryan.
Greetings, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. This is my first webinar. My name is Ryan. I'm a member of our theme review team. Our bread and butter is getting these wonderful submissions and helping our developers and our partners work through them to get them to a place where they can be published on the Shopify theme store. So it's a pleasure to be here.
Brilliant. Thanks, everyone. So, as we have seen, it's been a huge year for Shopify theme developers with the announcement of Online Store 2.0 at Unite in June that launched not only the highly anticipated sections on all pages, but also a new suite of developer tools to streamline your workflow, our new reference theme Dawn with the emphasis on performance, updated meta fields, and that adds so much more flexibility to storefronts. And we're going to take a look at all of those today, but I think one of the most impactful changes for the theme developer community is the reopening of the Shopify theme store after a 3.5 years of being sort of paused. This represents a huge opportunity for developers to take full advantage of all of the new features and architecture released with Online Store 2.0 and build innovative experiences for a global audience of merchants. And what's more is that the revenue share on the Shopify theme store is now 0% for the first million that you earn on the marketplace. So that means there's so much opportunity and so much potential in joining the theme partner community, growing your developer business with us. So as we are saying, it's never been a better time to build themes for the Shopify theme store. We want to support our existing theme partner community and give experienced developers and experts, like many of those are in the audience for this webinar, a head start in building those Shopify themes with this Theme Accelerator program. So to help developers in this program, we've created a new private Slack channel in our general partner Slack community, where you can connect with the theme partnerships team and myself, where we can guide you towards different resources, offer an opportunity to ask questions around the theme review process, and make sure that you're set up for success when you are submitting to the theme store. So, if you want to be part of this private Slack channel, please add your partner Slack handle to the chat and we can add you in. If you have not joined the Slack channel already, the general Slack channel, you can email me at liam@shopify.com. So that's Liam, Liam, at shopify.com. And we can send you an invite for the general Slack channel if you're not part of that already. And also, if you are watching this as a recording, and you don't have access to the chat, you can just email me again, liam@shopify.com, with your Slack handle, and I will add you in. And that channel is just for the people who are part of this accelerator program. We want to, create this tight community where you're able to access resources and get in touch with people within Shopify. And also, we'll be offering a expedited theme review process for all participants of the program too. So when you submit your theme, our review team will be able to prioritize your submission and get you up on the Shopify theme store as quickly as possible. And there'll also be some other exclusive assistance that we'll be able to share in that Slack channel that will give you the head start that you need on having your theme published in the theme store. So first off, we've a couple of things in the agenda before we get into our AMA with your questions. And the first thing we want to look at are the recent updates which have been made to the Shopify theme store that surfaces different critical information to merchants and also makes it easier for partners to showcase their themes. So Mike, can you talk us through some of the changes that have been shipped to the theme store in the past couple of months?
The theme store specifically.
Yeah.
Um, I probably, sorry, Liam, I might want to defer to, I know Sean is not here today, but I'm not familiar with specific changes for the theme store. Are
I was
you?
thinking things around the UI elements, like how we are surfacing online store 2.0 badges and the new collections, so that
Gotcha.
merchants can, have it just an easier discoverability journey there.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, the badges are. Sorry. Yeah, the badges are a big thing. So we have merchant being. I think we have a collection for OS 2.0 themes that merchants can discover. And I think in terms of the theme listing page, is that something you wanted to touch on, Liam?
Yeah. There's
Yeah.
been some enhancements to that, so it would be cool to share some of those.
Yeah, so I think the theme listing page, previously it was fairly, there wasn't a lot of content that theme partners could use to talk about their themes. There was two images, mobile and desktop image, and then there was a list of features. And I think below that there was some use cases of merchants using that theme. So moving forward, and I believe the changes are not all completed at this time, but we're going to be introducing more ability to have your theme images on different types of pages, product collection, for example. And also there's a video ability where you'll be able to upload a video showcasing perhaps the marketing aspects of your theme and just being able to talk through it and giving merchants more opportunity to figure out if your theme is what is the use case of your theme, and you'll be able to present examples. Yeah, so mostly a marketing ability in the theme for video. Does anyone else want to add to that?
Yeah, I can jump in. There's one or two other things there. We've also added some tracking pixels as well, just so that you can sort of track and help market your theme a bit better and start to be able to direct merchants and clients and customers towards the theme store to trial your theme. And that's one process that we've changed also there as well, is that the way we set up the system is now that the merchant gets to trial the theme before they actually commit to purchase. And this is done in effort to make sure that's a very merchant focused type of experience, so that they're fully aware of everything that the theme can offer before they actually commit themselves to a full purchase.
Marcus, is that so the tracking pixels, is that data available for theme developers, or is that relayed through Shopify?
And as far as I know, it's basically the tracking pixels that they can input. I think there's three types at the moment. Obviously, Facebook being one, Google Analytics, and that will be from the theme developers end. So that'll be literally collated, and they can assess it on their side.
Cool. And of course, you can expect as well that further down the line in the months and years to come, we're going to be enhancing the theme store even more. There's a lot that we have in the pipeline, so definitely keep an eye on the theme store, and keep your eyes on the developer changelog, where we'll be also releasing information that will be applicable for developers in this space.
I
So
suppose
one, yep.
Sorry, and just the one thing as well, I suppose that the big thing about the theme store, there's obviously the rev share, which is a huge element which everybody's aware of, that we're now taking 0% for the first million on any sales of a theme, and then 15% thereafter, and obviously that's reset every year, which is quite an exciting opportunity, quite generous, I do believe. I think everybody will agree on that. And also, I mean, we've changed the price capping system for the theme store as well, so it's now $100 for the minimum and up to 500 for the maximum as well.
It's amazing.
And
So,
I would add just a bit more context. Well, unless you want to move on, Liam.
No,
I think that price flexibility is a really important change that we recently came out with. That I know a lot of theme partners, as they grow and as more merchants are using their theme, ultimately a merchant's buying your theme up front, and then from there you are expected to support it. So if you are providing a particularly special service in your support, or you feel like you can justify a higher price point either with features or support, then I'm really happy that we provide that flexibility now.
Yeah, absolutely, and it does speak to merchants in different stages of their success path. There might be some that are just new, limited budgets, and they're going in, and possibly they'll be looking at themes that are more competitively priced. And then also we have mature merchants, people with developer teams and designers, and they might be looking to something that does have a bit more flexibility, more customization control, and maybe that does warrant a higher price point as well. So definitely does allow that flexibility within there, and it is quite an important move. Agreed.
For sure. And before you even get to that point, though, there is definitely a lot of important pieces of documentation that developers will need when they're looking to submit to the theme store. Probably the most important is our new theme store requirements. And in order for themes to be published on the theme store, as I'm sure many people here know, they'll need to meet the different requirements that include those specific feature sets, support for Online Store 2.0, performance and accessibility benchmarks, demo stores, all of that great stuff. Ryan, as someone who has currently been reviewing themes that are being submitted, what kind of advice would you have for developers that are navigating this process?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question, Liam. So my biggest recommendation in regards to the technical requirements is just to make sure that you take the time to really lay them all out and digest them, and make sure that specific requirements such as the mandatory feature set, so that includes things like unit price, surface pickup, product media, which can be a bit of a finicky one. Make sure that these are all completed in their entirety, as well as QA'd to a high enough level that they won't block you during your submission process. The reason why I mentioned these specifically is because there's a bit of an inference that travels through the technical requirements. The biggest one being we have to make sure that the technical requirements are met under the hood that the mandatory feature set is in place and that the cursory performance and accessibility score are what we would consider a passing grade. And so if the mandatory feature set isn't implemented in full, then we can't technically give you an accurate performance score or an accessibility score as a result of that. And so the biggest piece of advice, just to come full circle, is just to make sure that all of these things have been integrated before submitting. Otherwise, the feedback that you would get from us would likely be pointing towards those specific elements and just asking you to go back to take a look at the documentation and to then just ensure that these things have been completed and QA'd. So I know that was a bit of a roundabout answer, but that's pretty much the best advice I could give.
No, that's great. And I'm sure there will be a lot of other questions and that go into those theme store requirements a little bit in more detail during the AMA section of the webinar. So we'll definitely be returning to that. But I just wanted to as well touch on a little bit of the new developer tools that are available. And in order to assist with your actual build process, we've launched this suite of new developer tools that allow you to work in theme files in a much more robust and reliable approach than previously. Thomas, maybe can you speak a little bit more about how the Shopify CLI, the GitHub integration, and theme check can all be adopted to improve the developer experience for Shopify theme developers?
Where to start? So, I mean, I'm going to share the links for people who don't know about the CLI. So it all kind of starts with the CLI. That's our really kind of our central onboarding point for getting started with theme development. So it's about getting that installed, and that alongside with we still don't have the ability to create a partner account or to run the CLI without a partner account. So that works in conjunction with signing up for a partner account. And from there, that kind of gets you going and started. In particular, let me find the link for the actual getting started guide with themes. That is going to get there. It is getting started. Oh, that's just the okay. Maybe I'll follow. If somebody could paste the link to the like getting started with themes, it might let people follow along with kind of. I'm going to be recounting this off the top of my head. But CLI really lets you, from a central point in your command line, get started with a new theme project. It allows you to bootstrap a kind of new theme project with our latest free theme, which is Dawn. So it kind of automate or like shortcuts the process of getting started with some kind of starting point. From there, it's really Dawn is meant as a reference of some point, so you could initialize a new project and kind of just use that as a reference to learn how to build themes. And then also from there, you can start tweaking it, or you could start with an empty theme, or you could rip stuff out. Not sure if the themes team got the skeleton theme ready. I need to validate that. We've had skeleton themes in the past. This idea of like an empty theme that you really start from scratch. Um, but this whole premise of having a starting point is kind of key to theme development, and that I've seen in the past that it's rare that people start totally from scratch. That you'll have some existing kind of point of reference to be building off of. And Dawn is meant to be kind of that new starting point that's using a lot of new approaches and this kind of focus on not having an extensive local build pipeline, keeping things simple, really just using modern JS, vanilla CSS, and HTML/Liquid. So once you're up and running, up the next thing that kind of gives you a bit more structure to your workflow is if anyone's been developing for, I feel, more than a few months, you've probably come across GitHub or just Git. Git lets you batch your changes into commits and really lets you give structure to your workflow. It allows multiple developers to be working on the same project at once with the pull request, kind of pull request review, merge in my changes workflow. And all of that works really well now with Shopify, that any changes that are made in your GitHub repo will get pushed to your store and vice versa if there's any changes made to your store. They get pulled into your GitHub repo. That has a really big win because before there could be changes done to your store and it wasn't always clear exactly where those changes were made. So if you had a merchant go in and modify some code, wasn't always clear where those changes or specific lines that were changed. All of that now gets thrown into a Git commit whenever it happens. So definitely check out the GitHub integration. I will share the link as well. And then we finally land on theme check. So you're developing your theme and you're coding away. And before you would write out some liquid and push it to Shopify, preview your changes. You can preview it with CLI with your uh, the Shopify server command, and that's going to give you a preview of your local development environment. But the error that you get back is like, oh, just invalid syntax liquid, or like we've got some work to do on the error reporting for liquid. But what theme check really helps with is it's a linter. So if you're familiar with ESLint or StyleLint or um, any other linter that you've been using, this really is a tool that is constantly reading the liquid and other theme files in your theme and checking it for common errors, typos, best practices. And that's really worth giving a read through for what it does check right now. And my colleague CP is working adamantly on some really cool features coming up the pipeline. Best one is the object autocomplete. So you could type out product dot, and then it would list out all of the things that are contained in the product object, and you could just select that. So no need to go to the docs anymore to figure out, oh, what's the price variable or price field, or yeah, lots to check out there. Let me get you the link for that too. I would ask, did I miss anything, Liam?
I don't think so. I think that's really good. I think, you know, alongside the requirements that are available, having access to all of these tools, I just think like all of these together are going to be like super helpful for developers that are they might be creating their first Shopify theme, working with Dawn and looking at how to ensure that the theme that they're building is correct with theme check, linting all of the liquid, and then also going through all of those requirements. So I think all of those little pieces fit together, and yeah, no, thanks for sharing all of that about the developer tools. And I think it's time now to then open up the AMA and start going through some of your questions. So we've had a lot of questions that came in prior to the webinar, so we're going to go through those first and then look at some of the questions that you've been asking. I see that there is some questions coming through, as this has been going on, and feel free to keep asking. We'll get through as many as we can. So let's start off. So the first one is a technical question that's coming in here from Michael at Shopify, and he's asking: is the parent-child theme structure that's similar to WordPress, is that on the roadmap? Um, as far as I know, it's not on the roadmap. Maybe Thomas can speak to us a
Yeah.
little bit more in terms of the technical aspects of it. But maybe like underneath that question is asking more about the making sure that the upgrade path for merchants is as easy as possible. That's actually improved a little bit with Online Store 2.0. I think particularly with app blocks, making less changes to the code of a theme. Um, that should help merchants stay on that upgrade path a little bit easier. But maybe Thomas, you might have a little bit to add there.
Yeah. I think you're right. At the core of this is kind of talking about upgrades and layering on changes on top of kind of as this question was, on top of a parent. Yeah, and I'm familiar. I mean, before Shopify, I was working with WordPress, and this system always worked. It worked well for me. It's definitely something that we've talked about internally. Just this whole problem of theme upgrades in general. Um, the reality is ultimately the solution that we have to come out with is something that works for the what's our official public number right now? Over 1.7 million stores worth. We need to be yeah. It's a really complex problem with a huge number of stores that needs to work kind of both future facing and with existing stores, because we can't just leave all of those merchants who have uh, that want the upgrades as well. So yeah, no, it's a good hint, and I'm happy to see that other people are thinking or like pulling from kind of other examples that we see in the web platform or kind of CMS ecosystem.
Yeah, it's definitely a solution that we're looking to progressively improve upon. I'll just run quickly into the next question from Sasha, um, asking about why are there still no new themes since reopening the theme store. Um, and then maybe Ryan, you can speak to this a little bit more. Being close to that space, um, and maybe as well like talk about the importance of following those theme store requirements very closely.
Certainly. Thank you, Liam. So with the reopening of the theme store, we did produce a soft launch, which saw 8 new themes enter our offering from our existing theme partners. So this was just kind of a way for us to kind of get the wheels moving, test our methodology for reviews. And so that was largely successful. Pertaining to current submissions from developers who are looking to emerge into the Shopify theme ecosystem, the biggest hindrance that we're finding is that the technical requirements haven't been met in full to an extent where we can actually provide a full review. That's just kind of coming back to the previous point I made with the previous question, is like, why are the theme requirements so important? It's just because we aren't able to really move on to the subsequent stages of the review process if they haven't been met. What we end up doing is getting into these dialogues with theme partners who are looking to submit to the Shopify theme store and hopefully help coach them through some of these technical hurdles. But in order to move on to a design UX phase, or to even further go on to a breaking review, which is where we start to surface bugs and really try to push the theme to edge case, those technical requirements really do have to be met. Otherwise, it's considered an incomplete submission. And so, what we'll do in this case is, if the submission comes in and it's missing a couple of mandatory features, for instance, we'll make note of this. We'll point towards the documentation, and then hopefully the submission, or the partner who has provided the submission, takes the feedback, goes and digests the documentation, integrates it back into their build, QAs it to a certain extent, and then resubmits it after that fact. And what we've found is that often we get kind of hasty resubmissions. And so my biggest recommendation in this case would just be to really make sure that the technical requirements have been integrated into the build. It'll just lend itself to a much more streamlined review process in the long run. And, in our heart of hearts, as a theme review team, we definitely don't favor the idea of rejecting theme submissions, because we understand it's putting yourself out there to submit something to Shopify for us to review. And so we want to be as constructive as possible. But if it is something that is clearly stated in the documentation that hasn't been met as part of the submission, that's likely what our feedback is going to show up as, is just kind of like this has been missed. It's a binary requirement, so it's either there or it's not. And in the case where it is there, if it has been QA'd to a certain extent, we'll comment on that. But that's pretty much where it'll likely end up in terms of our feedback. So hopefully that
So
answers the question.
So QAing is definitely hugely important, and I think that's maybe one of the benefits of this Team Accelerator program, is that we'll be able to create a space where you can ask questions and prepare your submission before it's ready to be sent off to the team review team, and having that space where we're able to just guide and as well just really encouraging people to QA as much as they can. You really can't test too often in these situations. So we have another question here on this is more on the theme pricing on the theme store. This is from Michael from at Shopper Free again. He's asking why have any limit on theme pricing and our theme price is set by us, the developers, or by Shopify. So, Mike, maybe you want to take that one.
You're muted, Mike.
Sorry about that. Everyone can hear me, I hope.
Yep.
So thanks for the question, Michael. Yeah, so theme pricing, a few things to chat about here. So first of all, yeah, the prices are set by the developers, and you're free to set between 100 and 500, I believe. We chose 500. We thought the conversation about having no limit did come up, and don't all hold me to this, but it's something that we might explore in the future. I think the pricing model as a whole for themes is something that we'll be looking into more deeply in the future. So stay tuned. Hopefully that answers your question.
Cool. Yeah, I think um, the scale that's possible now is definitely an improvement on what was previously available. So there's definitely a lot more freedom available today than there was previously.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just quickly, I think to like really answer the question, the reason why we didn't go with like a no limit right away is because we don't have very many teams in the theme store to start, and we didn't want like really sky high price teams coming in early on. So I think the idea was like, let's have a limit at first, and when we get a larger theme catalog, we can kind of explore the idea of removing the cap.
Hmm. Yeah. No. Um, yeah, definitely worthwhile. Thinking about how to price and looking at the offering that your team has. There is a question here around sections which might be required. This is coming in from Mutu. As a theme developer, should I provide a section as a page designer for upselling or cross selling on the order thank you page? I think I can speak to that. I think with the order that thank you page, that's not actually part of the theme, if I'm correct. So that's out of scope really for what you need. Um, but if you are, wondering which sections that you do need to have contained within your theme, again, the theme requirements actually lists all of those out, all of the different files that are required in the different sections. Some of them are required, but there could also be some sections that you want to include that are superfluous to that. Um, and potentially around cross selling. Um, and upselling, if it's theme related, I think the only places really would be maybe on the cart or on the product page. That might be the most applicable pages for those types of sections.
And just to, a little bit more to expand on that as well, Liam, when considering these sections and when considering what to place into a theme, have a think about what the theme is, who it's aimed at. I mean, who's its audience, who's its target audience. I mean, what vertical is it associated with? Does it make sense? Don't What I'd really avoid or ask anybody to avoid doing is putting sections and settings in for the sake of having them in there. Really be deliberate with the theme. Make sure that if this theme is built for, is it for large stores that do an awful lot of promotions that want cross-selling, then perhaps it would make sense to have something in that. Perhaps it's a small boutique store with handcrafted items. Perhaps that wouldn't make sense to have it in there. But just do be deliberate, because obviously every decision that you make in terms of sections and settings adds weight to the theme, can impact on performance. So having those deliberate intentions in there will also go a long way to make sure that your theme resonates with whatever vertical or merchant type that it's aimed at. And also you'll come up with, when you do get your theme onto the theme store, you might find that you had sections and settings in there that you felt at the time made sense, but through merchant feedback or through user feedback, you'll find that maybe it doesn't resonate that well, and maybe it might be something you stripped out, or maybe there's something that you could add in at a later date depending on that. So do be deliberate on the choices you make.
For sure, that's a really good point. Actually, just thinking about the end merchant and the end buyer, and implementing only those features that might be suitable for those. So you want to minimize complexity, but also make it appropriate for the industry or the merchant that might be using this. So we have a question here from Sasha, who's asking about apps on demo stores. asking, can I use Shopify Reviews app on the demo store? And otherwise, how would I show reviews, product ratings? I've noticed some themes on the Shopify theme store do this. Vince, maybe do you want
Yeah, I
to
can take this.
answer this? Yeah.
Yeah, great. Hi, Sasha. Thanks for your question here. So yes, the answer is yes. You can use the Shopify Reviews app. It's one of the many few that we allow. So we also have the free translation apps that are also allowed to be used for multi-language shops. And just to touch on your next question, actually, which we have listed here, which is about demo stores and if they have to be fully translated if you have those other languages. And the answer is yes to that. So the reason is, and also just to add to that, is the reason why we don't want too many apps built onto the demos is when a merchant comes in, they see the product that they're buying, the theme. The last thing we want is to have a whole bunch of apps with a bunch of different features, and the merchant downloads that theme, and suddenly all those features that they thought they were getting aren't included. So we've made it quite strict to just include the Shopify Reviews app and also the a free translation app if you want to provide multi-language. Also, just advice on multi-language. Actually, it comes later in a question, so I'll wait for it. But we have another question for multi-language later on, which I'll touch on in more detail.
Cool. Thanks, Vince.
Yeah.
I have a question here around theme reviews and around feedback coming from Christian. Um, Ryan, maybe you might want to take this again. If a theme is declined, will we get feedback so that we can improve?
So the degree of feedback that we offer will really depend on the submission itself. So in the case where a submission comes in and perhaps it's not OS 2.0 compliant, or it's built on what would be considered more of a vintage framework, like we've received some that kind of predate sections, which is kind of interesting. But in that case, what we would do is, like I mentioned in the previous question, point more towards the documentation, because that's indicative that the documentation maybe wasn't seen or maybe wasn't digested to a degree where it can be integrated into the submission. And so really, if you're looking for more extensive feedback, that's likely going to be coming in the way of feeding back on performance scores, feeding back on things like design UX once the technical hurdles have been overcome, as well as the breaking review. And so we will always try to give you some action items to serve as recourse. Obviously, we don't want to be discouraging when it comes to the idea of resubmitting. Resubmitting is something that we're actually very adamant that partners do in the case where maybe their first attempt doesn't go through successfully. It's largely an iterative process anyway. And so what we're hoping to do now that we've acquired more bandwidth and we've grown our team a little bit more is be a little bit more illustrative in what action items are the immediate next steps that can be taken for a partner to then take a step back, work those into their build, and then resubmit at a later date. My biggest point of encouragement here would be to maybe take a little bit more time to digest the feedback and to make sure that it's worked in accordingly than to turn around in 24 or 48 hours and resubmit again, because it's really just going to slow down your process as a result, because we may or may not be able to get around to that resubmission at that time. And so if we're going to be reestablishing the same feedback over and over and over again, it may slow down the process as a result. And so,
Yeah. And it's also possible to get feedback even before that theme is submitted from us, and that's why we've created that private theme accelerator Slack channel. So if there are aspects of your design that you'd like feedback from, I'm definitely available to give feedback, and we can also uh, get other people's responses and feedback from the theme partnerships team. And I think this kind of leads into the next question here from Vladimir, who's asking, are there any services or resources or maybe mentors to prepare themes for moderation or for submission? In addition to that theme checklist that exists, and that's from Vladimir. So Vladimir, um, the requirements are definitely going to be your source of truth in this process. But I can also say, this is again why the Theme Accelerator, why we want to run this program, is to give people some assistance and guidance on that process. Again, before you submit, where you can prepare. I'm definitely available in Slack, and even if you want to have one-on-one conversations with me as well, we can definitely work on that kind of level as well. So another question here from Vladimir again, and Vince, maybe you will want to take a look at this or answer this again around the locales. Vladimir is asking, how many language locales should a theme need to get published in the theme store, and which languages are required?
So right now, it's only one language required. Obviously, English is the most common we have, but we recommend as many as you like, honestly. Say 4 to 5 is a good starting point. The more languages you cover, the larger your potential audience, so keep that in mind. But that being said, we're also going to be pushing more and more for international themes, especially in the France region, German, and Japanese. So something to think about as well.
Also,
Brilliant.
just on that point as well, is that you don't have to submit your theme with all these languages in place. These can be further updates and additions you do over time as well. So just don't be thinking that you have to overload yourself from the get-go, but it could be things that you phase out over time with the theme as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. The probably, in the initial stages, definitely better to focus on the those requirements over those extra locales that can be included later on. So we have a question here around the naming of themes. How should we name the theme? Is combining two words allowed? Say, for example, super fast, start well, or does it strictly need to be one word for the name? I believe that's from Mutu as well. Marcus, do you want to speak to this?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, in terms of the size of the name, 14 characters or fewer. So that's the first stipulation that we have in there. There are some requirements in the developer documentation around theme naming. What we do suggest is to ensure that, the name is important to a certain point, but what we don't permit is using things that are Shopify products such as Unite or Polaris, but also try not to use, commonly used terms that would be seen as representing sort of e-commerce platforms, SEO related benefits. For example, don't be naming your themes after features such as slideshow, performance, mobile, sales, things like starts fast, or this is that's a very prescriptive way of trying to highlight and promote your theme being performant. All themes on the theme store have to reach a certain degree of performance and should have performance and accessibility built in from the get-go. So I would really encouraged to lean more towards helping to describe your theme based on the vertical or the industry type, or what it's the concept of the theme. For example, there's a great version there by Archetype called Streamline. And essentially what they're doing is they're targeting the user base, the end base that the merchants will be targeting, which is like the millennials, people who have short attention span, quick churn. So everything on that theme is it's quick, it's dynamic products, it's very fast. There's a light emphasis on a lot of content. So in fact, the theme is streamlined. So hence the name. So think of it more in terms of like that, but do lean into the requirements that are there in the developer documentation, and that should help guide you.
Great advice there. So we're going to jump into the questions that have come in during the webinar. We have a great question here from Galen King. He's asking, I've heard Shopify is encouraging leaner, more design, opinionated, best practice focused themes. Can you share more about that type of philosophy here? So I think that's maybe talking about themes which are not so much trying to be geared towards every type of merchant, but being a little bit more focused on specific verticals or industries or buyers or even countries. If anyone would like to speak to that.
I can start. Maybe people can add on to it. Hey, Gillian, glad to see you here. Yeah, so we did have the idea earlier on to like let's move away from like generic themes that kind of cater to every merchant audience. And for a while, we were kind of pushing the narrative that's kind of the other direction. We want themes that are kind of more niche and focus more on like what specific industries. I think we're there. I think we're still going there, but maybe the push isn't so specific to being super niche. But having said that, I think there is changes. From my understanding, there's probably going to be changes coming down from the theme store eventually that focus on search and filtering that will make it kind of incentivize merchants to like start searching for themes based on what they need for their businesses. So it's probably a good idea to focus on like if you're building a theme, think about like the industry that you want to serve, or if there's like a specific product fit, or if you or your agency are very familiar with a certain type of product, you have experience with that, that would be a great starting point too. So anyone else wants to add on to that?
Yeah, I mean, with the like the themes that are, you know, let's call it trying to be the one size fits all, you can end up being, you know, shooting yourself in the foot, because we do find from our merchant surveys, our feedback and stuff like that as well, that what merchants go to the theme store to do is to try and find a theme that suits their industry or suit their store needs quite specifically. So if they're going in and seeing a theme that is sort of across all a range of different industry types or verticals or whatever, they might feel that it's not tailored enough for their needs. And you know, this also will allow for, you know, quicker development times as well. If you really focus down on what vertical you're aiming for example, and I know I've said this in one of the other webinars before, if you're aiming for like a food and beverage industry, I mean, there's likely no need that you're going to be thinking about size charts or color swatches or items like that that would be more relevant in a fashion orientated theme. And that will allow you the scope and the space to make more deliberate choices in terms of your settings for that industry type, and that will resonate with that merchant base, and therefore will end up in being more sales for merchants using that theme. And then of course it's going to end up in less of a support debt for you as well, while merchants are trying to leverage your theme that might be a little bit broad and asking for all these very specific requests to try and get it to shoehorn into their specific industry. So in the long term, it is probably better to be really focusing in rather than trying to be too broad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, we're definitely great points to be aware of when, you know, mapping out the kind of design decisions that you want to make. Got another great question here again from Galen, and it's on something I don't think we've talked so much about in this webinar, but around support. Um, so Galen's asking, ongoing team support can be a massive overhead that has a very long tail. Will Shopify be doing anything to improve merchant expectations around support?
Can I just jump in first before
Sure.
we get too deep into that? I think support can be viewed with a negative light sometimes in terms of a burden, but also, I mean, and this is from years of working with the team partners themselves in the current community that's there, the amount of user research, feedback, improvements, suggestions that they have garnered and helped develop their themes over the years through their support has been absolutely invaluable. So I would look to it as something that not only helps you get extremely good reviews because you're providing a really good service, but it also is beneficial in helping you iterate on your theme to make it a better product and resonate with merchants more. So do see it as much as a tool in your arsenal for improving your theme product, as much as a but I hate using the term burden because it's not. I mean, it's if you are getting support, you're getting sales, your people are enjoying your theme, they're using it, and it's obviously making an effect. So do view it in that light more so than thinking of it as something that you have to carry.
Yeah, I can also touch on.
Sorry, Vince, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I'll also just touch on it, and I'll hand it to you, Ryan. But just another thing to consider is, you know, once you get in the theme store, you know, depending how many sales you have, the more support you'll have. So it's not like it's overnight you're going to get in and you get swamped with support, you know. So it's as you make sales, you know, if you make a ton of sales and your support goes up, that's a good thing. You know, you're doing well. And as Marcus said, there's a ton of valuable information you can get through support. So you could look at it in a positive lens, as well as, you know, we don't expect partners to support customizations. So it's actually a great opportunity for you to have even another side business with your theme business for further customizations. So some of our current partners actually already do that right now. They have a side business, which could be a good addition to your suite of offerings. And yeah, beyond that, Ryan, do you want to take? You had something to say?
Yeah, absolutely. I just really wanted to echo what Marcus was saying in that, as a theme review team, we really try to replicate merchant use cases as faithfully as we can, just based on our research. And really, we can only get so close. Whereas the merchants that are actually using your theme will be the ones that provide these very, very unique edge cases that'll maybe surface a bug that would otherwise have slipped through the cracks. And it's really just invaluable to get that type of feedback. Also, I find that support is a huge leveraging point to get to know your merchants using your theme, and also help get those like really heart of the positive nature for your theme as well. So support is often, you know, kind of underappreciated in a lot of ways, but it's a huge, huge, huge factor in what makes themes successful, and also helps drive further sales down the line, because reviews are something that prospective buyers check very, very adamantly. And so if you have 100 reviews saying that your support was top notch, then chances are that'll help that whole tipping point between a merchant deciding not to buy or to buy your theme. So I'll leave it at that. But
That's good. And
I would, and then if I could ground it on the like a final note, if that's okay, just so we get the full circle here.
I have a final note too.
Oh, you have a final note?
A
Oh,
few final notes, yeah. Who gets the mic drop?
Penultimate note.
I would say I would just add that it's I think it's fair though for us to recognize that support is an ongoing effort, and that it's a cost to the business, and that ultimately it's not something that we've kind of signed and like this is the final state of it, and this is how you're like this is how this problem is solved for the rest of time. That this is kind of a something that will be continued to look at in the future from I mean, and this is really kind of spitballing different areas, but it's from a like how do we adjust the business model perspective to better kind of compensate for ongoing support? How do we incentivize better support from theme partners? What systems do we have in place to kind of deprecate your theme, or kind of hand off, kind of terminate support, and that like, hey, I'm done with themes, it's time for me to get out. What kind of methods do we have available there? So I think um, really good follow-up conversation, maybe something that we can have in the private Slack, or just these are the types of conversations that are really where partners and Shopify can really collaborate to come out with kind of the best long-term solution. And I think the feedback that partners provide Shopify has a really strong weight at the table when it comes to making these decisions. So I would emphasize that your voice really does mean something to when it comes down to making these types of decisions.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to add something similar. Thanks, Thomas. I was just like to really directly answer the question, Galen. I think the answer is like in the short term, we don't have any plans to tackle that problem. However, like Thomas said, we're always iterating and we want to improve on the platform, and partners provide valuable feedback. So it's not something that we're ignoring. It's something that's always on our minds. So we'll be looking at that in the future.
Yeah. No, thanks. I know we're almost coming up to time, but I might try and squeeze in a few more. Maybe try and do a bit of a rapid fire on some of the questions. This one is coming in from Ash. He is asking, what influences the addition of new industries included in the theme store filter, and do you recommend choosing industries already included over new ones? If anyone can speak to I guess the list of industries that is on the theme store filter.
Yeah, I mean, I can
Right.
jump into that. I mean,
Yeah.
unless you want to take a mic. Too.
I was just going to ask if that question could be thrown up. So
Mm.
just wanted to see the first part of the question again quickly.
Yeah, I can repeat that. So,
Yeah.
what influences the addition of new industries included in the theme store filter, and do you recommend choosing industries that are already included over new ones?
Got it. I can go, but Marcus, you
Yeah, I
because
mean, all I'll just say is that, I mean, as opposed to, like, say, choosing industries over other ones, I mean, you can look at, say, fashion and apparel. In fashion and apparel, that's pretty broad. You could have, children's wear, you could have sportswear, you can have high-end luxury fashion, bespoke items, large discounts. So think about, not only, does it need to cater for every aspect within fashion and apparel, but also there is, let's call it, subcategorizations in that would perfectly suit a theme as well. So it'll be a long time before all of those sections are completely filled.
Yeah.
cool. And
But
just in terms of choosing new industries,
Mm.
I think we're open to that. Like displaying in new industries on the theme store, like filtering in the future is when those industries become larger segments of merchant themes. I think right now, if I understand correctly, the industries that we display in the dropdown are the largest industry niches. There's a few others that we track in data, but they're very, very small. So over time, those might grow, and we'll add them to the theme store.
Cool. Yeah. I have a technical question here from Connie that is also related to the Themester requirements. Ryan, maybe you'll be able to speak to this a little bit. Connie's asking, the theme requirements state that users should be able to navigate the main menu and submenus when JavaScript is disabled. Is this really an absolute must? And I guess maybe in that question as well, when people are looking to implement a Node.js or a Node.js compatible menu, are there resources that we can share that will make that process easier? Is there some testing methods that you'd recommend?
I saw Thomas's eyes light up, so I'll field this
Oh,
one up.
can
okay.
I answer this one? Um,
Yeah.
I literally wrote an article on it last year, or I just pasted it.
Oh,
Um, yeah, this is a really cool subject. It all boils down to accessibility and ultimately device compatibility, and then going into legacy browsers and ultimately um, you Shopify is so massive now, and the number of merchants that there are and the number of buyers that use those merchant sites, even if it's like less than 1% of buyers accessing your store from like IE 9 or IE 8 or the old BlackBerry browser or like from Nintendo Switch or Wii, or that ultimately you benefit from providing an experience to these users, that ultimately, if you can provide, it doesn't have to be the full experience, but the essence here is that you should be providing something, and that is where the navigation kind of comes in, is that we're not asking we're not asking for you to provide your fully featured experience to all browsers, but being able to just show something that is at least navigatable. And kind of the themes team has always had this rule internally, and I think it's reflected in the requirements in some manner, of that with JS disabled, like with Node.js, just HTML, CSS, you should be able to navigate to a product page, add something to the cart, and then check out. And when you take JS out of the equation, CSS fails gracefully going back really far back. Ultimately, if your page just ends up being HTML, HTML also fails gracefully. So if your theme works without JS, then, or it shows at least the core content without JS enabled, then vastly increases the chances that that store will be accessible to everyone. That's cool. Oh, we lost
sorry,
Sorry,
Ryan.
hit the
we
wrong
lost
button.
Ryan for a second.
Now I'm back. You haven't shaken me quite yet, but I have to completely echo what Thomas mentioned. It's like, how does it handle when the wheels fly off? So in terms of JS being disabled, are you still able to conduct that customer journey from landing page through checkout? And so in the case where we do our Node.js testing, it doesn't necessarily have to navigate 100% faithfully just using keyboard navigation, for instance, but like, are there ways to get to the areas of the shop that you need to do the meaningful actions that are required to make sure that the checkout experience is exactly what you're you're trying to achieve. And so, adjusting quantity and stuff like that, removing items from cart, navigating to submenus, like as long as all of those are still to a functional degree without the inclusion of JS, then that would be something that we would consider workable. And we will feed back on areas where maybe we run into issues, but the biggest focus of that is specifically the customer journey.
That's brilliant. Yeah, I think Thomas shared that link to his blog as well in the chat, which I think will be definitely a really great resource for people that are trying to achieve this. Um, so I think we have time for just one more question. Um, but before I ask the last question, or look at the last question, thanks to everyone for tuning in. If you are looking to gain access to the Theme Accelerator Slack channel, as I mentioned, you can either add your Slack handle, your existing Slack handle, to the chat, and we can add that in, or you can email me at liam@shopify.com. I'm already seeing those emails coming in, and I'll start adding people to that channel as soon as this webinar is over. I know that there is so many great questions here that we haven't gotten around to yet, but we can actually address those questions in the Slack channel too, in the private Slack channel, going forward over the next days into next week, so we can make sure that the things that you're concerned about, the things that you're wondering about, that we're able to address those. And it's also really great feedback for us to get as well, to understand in your experience what a developer is thinking about. So the last question here is from Anonymous, and they're wondering, have we noticed patterns on what makes a theme successful? Say there are some commonalities in themes that get to the trending on the front page. And I'm actually gonna throw that over to Marcus. I think you have seen a lot
Yeah.
of really great successful themes in the last couple of years, and I think you probably have some good advice there.
Yeah, I mean, I know that an awful lot of people tend to say, like, what is the magic feature sets? What are the magic settings? What are, like, is there the perfect recipe that's going to make this theme a success straight out of the bat? And to be honest, there isn't. What the only thing that really sets these themes aside from many of the other themes that may not be performing as well, from what we've seen, is that they have thoroughly understood exactly who they're targeting, and they've built specifically around that focus. In terms of looking at the type of design deliberation that they've made for this, letting that speak to the quality. And I'll just name off some themes off the top of my head, and I'll just add this disclaimer: I'm not setting any theme above any other one in the theme store. I think they're all fantastic, to be honest. But obviously, just some spring to mind as good example. Prestige from Maestro. I mean, their entire theme is set around the luxury feel, the brand experience, and they deliver that through like beautiful animations, that gentle fade effects, really strong image focus, and I mean, it's those type of choices that are made that might seem that you almost don't realize that they're there, but they're create very subtle experiences that are focusing in on those particular merchants that create a wonderful store experience. So understand who you're looking for and who you're trying to target this theme to. Do your research, do use user research testing, chat to merchants. If you've got clients as well, that's always a great way to sort of garner experience. To what Mike said earlier, if you've got particular experience with a vertical or an industry type, or uh, even a customer type, then you'll start to be able to leverage those learnings and build that into your theme, your design, your development, and your settings choice. Also, more is not more in many cases as well. Trying to overload your theme with every possible customization can often be detrimental, because what it can end up is with merchant setup fatigue, where they're like literally taking too much time to try and set up their store and get to market. By allowing the theme to make conscious opinionated decisions for the merchant, to help them create a store that looks like they've had a professional designer come in, but also then to have the performance, the accessibility, and the underhood power, so that whenever a buyer is on the store, that they're having a seamless experience. It's making sure those core items are in place, and I think that really does speak to how themes do well, more so than any secret recipe.
I think maybe one of the overlooked features as well, or not really features, but one of the overlooked elements would be demo stores, how they're populated and how they're
Absolutely.
presented as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is the thing. You get a chance to showcase your theme. You get a chance to showcase it to potential customers. So make sure that you really do take time. And then also, if you do update your theme with new features or with new elements or make changes, make sure to update the demo store as well, because has to be a living, relevant version of your theme that merchants get to experience. And then things like the considerations around, if you have a demo store that's up there with a predefined amount of sections and settings that are showcasing this theme really well, then make sure that when the theme is being downloaded, those are there by default, because very often you can see that some themes might have a great demo store, but then when the merchant downloads the theme, those aren't loaded by default, and then they're left sitting there wondering, how do I replicate that beautiful demo store that I have? So it's all about making the experience for the merchant setting up as easy as possible, and as enjoyable as possible, and helping them get to that success path quicker.
Absolutely. Any last thoughts before we wind it up?
I'm just really excited to work with you guys. It's been a long time coming, this theme store reopening, and just really, really excited to see what kind of ideas you guys have cooking up. Of course, we're going to be going back and forth a number of times. Please don't shy away from any of those burning questions that you have. I'm definitely here to assist you as well. And thank you guys for inviting me to this webinar. It's been a great experience.
Brilliant, yeah. And I can definitely echo what Ryan has said. Definitely don't, as I start adding everyone here into the private Slack channel, please use it. Ask questions. That's what we're here for. We want to demystify the review process as much as possible. We want to set you up for success. And so we can continue the conversation in that Slack channel. Like I said, the questions that we haven't answered, we can address them there, and just keep the conversation going. And if people want to set up one-on-one meetings with myself, I'm definitely open to that. Um, and basically, just allow us to help you to give you a head start to boost your development process, so we can really set you up for success in the theme store. So yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in. Thanks everyone in the audience, and all the presenters here for your time, for sharing all of your insights. It's been super valuable, and it's also just looking in the chat. It's great seeing all of the people in there, and yeah, really looking forward to working with you all. All right.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye for now,
Thanks,
and
everyone.
we'll
Bye
see
now.
you
Thank you.
in Slack.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye bye.
Bye.